London Reels, way better idea, sponsored by Xbrain. Every day I come into the studio, there's literally a million things to do. Whether it's booking a guest, taping a show, editing an episode, or trying to pitch that future sponsor. It's hard to know where to begin. So I took a tip from Martin Bjerregaard, our former guest, and I create a today list. It's not a to-do list, but it's those 3 things that you want to get done today. The ones you've been putting off, the phone calls you know you have to make. I focus on those, and I usually find I have a productive one. I hope that works for you. Today's Way Better Idea is brought to you by the guys at Xbrain. If you want to check out their grass-fed, free-range protein powder, you can go to xbrain.co.uk or click on the link below and get 15% off. Use the code LondonReal. Peace.
You know, sticking on the whole Simon Dixon crowdfunding platform here, Bank to the Future in the UK, you know, I think Simon's done an excellent job in pushing not only the technology and the concept, but also really going down there to Parliament, talking to MPs about crowdfunding. Because crowdfunding in the UK is a way to jumpstart this economy in ways that both parties should really be focusing on more carefully. And you know, one of the greatest things I've heard about crowdfunding as it relates to the UK economy, and get your take on this, Simon, is that in the UK, they've got a £2 billion gambling industry. And gambling is essentially people throwing their money away in increments of 10 pounds, you know, typical punt. But with crowdfunding, here you have a chance of, instead of throwing 10 pounds away, putting 10 pounds into a company, some equity, and that company could be a big success, and then start hiring people. So you're really taking a lot of that money that was really going down a sinkhole and turning it into very productive use that gives people a stake in the economy, the potential jobs. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I got into the crowdfunding space. To put that in context, in the UK, we've got about 4.8 million businesses at the moment. There was recently a report by Business Innovation and Skills that said that about 47% of small to medium-sized enterprises, if they could get finance, would want finance. And what another report showed that about 38% of small to medium-sized enterprises that secure funding immediately go on and hire more people. Now, at the moment in the UK, we've got about 2.5 million unemployed people. If those businesses that needed funded could get funding and they all employed one person, you'd have about 900,000 jobs. If they employed 2 people, that's 1.8 million jobs. If they employed 3 people, that's 2.7 million jobs. You know, that's more than UK unemployment. And this was one of the original things that got me into this space. I got really excited by the concept of, you know, if you look at the traditional retail banking system at the moment, if you take the big 5 UK banks, about 40% of the money that they lend goes to property in the UK. And that property is inflationary. It doesn't add value to the economy. It just simply, you know, it causes a real divide.
Yeah, let's stop right there for a second, because you mentioned, first of all, let's distinguish equity crowdfunding from rewards-based crowdfunding.
Yeah.
There's 2 major players in crowdfunding in the U.S. In San Francisco, there's Indiegogo.
Right.
In New York, there's Kickstarter.
Right.
Between the 2 of them, they've raised about $1 billion for projects where people pledge money. They get nothing in return in terms of equity, but they might get a reward, a T-shirt or an invitation.
What's a typical product? Is it a movie, album? I mean,
Album, well, I think movies have been relatively new to the crowdfunding space, but it's just any kind of project out there. I think the most successful one that we've seen in the States so far is for a watch that raised something like $10 million.
That was what?
That wasn't created before they did the funding, and then they funded it, created it, and then distributed it to the people that
and they
bought.
it's almost like you're taking pre-orders for a product, and you
Yes.
get those pre-orders, and they're putting up their money, and then you can go manufacture the product. And you combine that with a technology like 3D printing, for example. And now you have your pre-orders, you're paying for the product, people want the product, they've ordered the product, now you've got a 3D printing system, and now they're printing the project. So there's a whole wave of technologies all converging with finance, manufacturing, and media, which, you know, I'm very active in. But so equity crowdfunding, however, which Bank to the Future is involved with, is different than rewards-based.
Right.
And it's
not,
really
and not
only
legal in the U.S. Yes.
That's right. It's only available in the UK.
Right.
There's some laws passing in the U.S. that'll come online next year at some point. We don't know yet if it's only going to be for accredited investors, which means $1 million net worth or $200,000 of income. But here in the UK, for £10, you can own equity in a company and have a piece of that equity going forward. And this is really, I think, a lot of what Simon Dixon has done here is push on this very hard and speak with the MPs. But we know we talked about this before. Crowdfunding, you could say, was almost invented here in the UK, and certainly the equity crowdfunding was invented here in the UK. So many times, technologies and companies are birthed in Europe, and then they go to the U.S., and because of the scale of the U.S., because it's such a much bigger country, they become the dominant player in these things. With equity crowdfunding, which is invented here in Britain, is that a risk?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a risk, but what we've created in the UK is, with lots of political support from MPs who come from the same vision of economic growth and trying to create jobs, they love crowdfunding. They see the potential of equity crowdfunding, which was invented in the UK. And we've been working very closely with our regulator in the UK, the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, who's allowed crowdfunding to continue without actually closing it down, and also has shown lots of cooperation to create the perfect environment to allow crowdfunding to really excel in the UK.
This is going to be a competitive challenge to established banks. So I saw a piece in Forbes magazine, for example, that was kind of a slam of crowdfunding. I see there's, I'm not going to name the name, but there's a journal here in the UK that covers startups and high tech, and they tend to talk down to what they call the sharing economy. And they don't consider that to be viable. And if you look at the politics behind it, a lot of times you see the workings of a entrenched banking cartel at work. That there's a cartel here in the UK and those big five banks, and you're challenging that cartel. Not only are you talking about equity crowdfunding, Simon, but you want to crowdfund the first investment bank. You literally want to do a crowdfunded version of JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, which I think, obviously anyone who watches my show would understand why I would find that very appealing.
This week on London Real, former MI5 intelligence officer turned whistleblower, Annie Machon.
What we're looking at now is a de facto police state. All the laws are in place, they're just not being applied to most citizens yet. I think it's not a case of having anything to hide, it's having a case that I have a right to privacy, and I can't guarantee my government will uphold that right, therefore I need to take the steps to do it.
She talks NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden.
He would die for his country. He wants to try and improve the way his country operates within its own boundaries and protect its citizens. And we seem to forget and think that human rights are a luxury. They're not, they're fundamental, and privacy is one of them.
On Sunday, London Real presents Annie Machon, whistleblower.
So it's a very British mess, is the short answer.